Hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican. Today we're not talking with anybody, but we are having a reaction to a video that was put out by who was it? Who is this here? This is Liberalism is in Trouble. Aaron Bastani meets Francis Fukuyama downstream. Novara Media, there it is. So this is an interview with Francis Fukuyama. Francis Fukuyama is famous for his book in, I believe, '89, The End of History and the Last Man, where he was using the Hegelian ideas of how eventually there would be an ideology that would reign supreme, and would be the and that's where humanity would remain. There would be no more new ideas, but different ways of implementing that ideology. So he was, pretty convinced at the time that it was liberal democracy. Now, if you've when we're using that term, liberal democracy, it's democracy, but it's not direct. It's just really just elections, and then liberalism, ideas like the free market and individual rights are the things that we're talking about, the hallmarks of a liberal democratic state. But in this interview, he talks about regimes, and he's talking about democracy, and he knows the difference. But he is, and I wish he would use the term classical republicanism, because that's exactly what he's talking about here. Let's listen.
Britain, much less important about the effect of US
Okay, the unelected second chamber. He's talking about the House of Lords. Unless you've been following that over the last decade or two, there have been a lot of reforms to the House of Lords. Of course, for centuries, it was the aristocracy, and they represented themselves. They were peers. It was called the House of Peers sometimes, because they were all seen as equals, even though some of them were dukes or barons or I don't know, whatever else, earls. And so you would have these. You didn't even have a speaker, to lead like you did in the House of Commons. You would just, they would just get up. They did eventually get a speaker, but he didn't have the power like in the House of, like Speaker did in the House of Commons. And so the you would just kind of rise and say, "My lords," and then deliver your speech. They still do that today, but now they're called upon by a speaker who has the power to call upon people. Yeah. So, but under Tony Blair, there were reforms. I guess the first great reform was in 1911. There was a reform to give the House of Commons more power. Then under Tony Blair in the late 90s, he started to change out the membership, so it wasn't always actual aristocracy. It was some people who were appointed for a time by the prime minister, and that number has grown. That percentage has grown, and the number of actual aristocratic peers has shrunk over the last 2 decades. And so right now, it's really just an advisory council to the House of Commons. So that's what he's talking about, the unelected house, or the unelected chamber.
How broad is this term? You're a political scientist. I think that all democracies have the people control monetary policy. We appoint specialists.
Okay, so he's talking right there, I think, you could say we don't have, not all of our choices are made by the people. We don't have direct democracy. We have a classical, we have elements of classical republicanism. And that was the intent of the founding fathers. If you remember, the members of the Electoral College and the U.S. senators were chosen by the state legislatures. The president was not meant to be, and still is not chosen by the people. So, we've become more democratic over the centuries. The United States has, but I mean, is that a good thing? We still have a lot of experts, people that we like Francis Fukuyama is talking about here, people who control different policies. It's handed over to different agencies, and they're not elected by the people. They might be appointed by the president and confirmed by Congress, or just created by Congress. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Bureaucrats that health and social security services that are not directly elected, and decision making up to people, ordinary people. They don't have the time or the expertise to really, consider.
Okay.
Very complex public policy problems. So I think that the question you really need to.
He said mix, like the mixed regime.
The government really screws up. Is there a fundamental mechanism by which it can be held? Seen several revolutions taking place in Britain because people in office, current government. So in that respect, I think that's what means that it is still democracy. So do you think this is democracy? If we had a country trying to go.
All right, let's stop it there. But that is the that's Francis Fukuyama, and I really think he's still writing a lot of really good books that are really stellar in political science circles, and so I think that he needs to come over to our side of classical republicanism and recognize that a mixed regime, as he was alluding to there, is desirable. Contestatory democracy and non-domination liberty is the way to go. So that's all I have for today. Long live the Republic.